Great. Well, thank you. Good morning. I'm Claire Crooks. And as Wendy mentioned, I live in London, Ontario. So on Saturday, I came by train with my 4 kids, aged 5 to 13, and I was just sort of fussing with my slides and finishing things up. My 8-year-old was peeking over my shoulder, and he said, "Oh, what you doing?" I said, "I'm just getting ready for my talk." And he said, "Well, what's it on?" I said, "Teen dating violence." He said, "Well, what's that?" Well, it's when teenagers who are dating or like girlfriend and boyfriend hurt each other. And he looked really confused. He said, "But that makes no sense. Why, if you don't like each other, why would you like each other?" And the second like had lots of eyebrow waggling and kissy faces because he's 8. But it was a reminder to me, we aren't born with good relationship skills, and we don't just figure it out. Like, we're constantly learning them throughout childhood, youth, right into adulthood. And if there's one message I want you to leave with today, it's that teaching healthy relationships is the best way to prevent teen dating violence and other forms of violence. So to understand teen dating violence, we first need to understand teen dating. And depending on when you kind of came of age, that might have looked really different. So think about, when you kind of hit adolescence and what the dating scene sort of looked like. I was an adolescent in the late 80s, and like any other cohort, my peers and I had to figure out the complexities of dating. So how did you figure out if somebody liked you or if you liked them back? How did you figure out the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships? How did you figure out how to sort out a miscommunication or even how to end a relationship? Regardless of when you started dating, those are all basic things that we need to figure out. So back in the 80s, communication options were kind of limited, and you might get past something like this in class. "Do you like me? Yes, no, maybe." And maybe the people right around you would kind of crane their necks to see how it played out, but the audience was pretty small. In comparison, much of today's adolescent dating unfolds in the technology sphere, and it occurs through social media. Technology has made dating more complex and has introduced new forms of abuse. So again, in my day, if you wanted to send someone a nude picture, you're probably going to have to borrow your parents' camera, right? Figure out how to take the picture, and then you either had to drop the film off or mail it away, unless your parents had a Polaroid, and frankly, the quality of photos was terrible from those anyway. And then you waited for the photos to come back. If you wanted extra copies, they were 35 cents each, and all that gave you some time to kind of rethink your plan, right? In comparison, today, a decision made by a teen who is still developing their full capacity for good decision making can go viral in a day and have long-lasting implications. So as that complexity has grown, teens more than ever need opportunities to learn about healthy relationships and education and skills about how to recognize and respond to unhealthy ones or even abusive ones. So to help support teens in this way, whether you're a parent, a coach, a teacher, an aunt, a neighbor, we all need to know what is teen dating violence and why should we care? How do we prevent it? And what can every adult do? So teen dating violence can take different forms. It can include physical abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. And what we know is that about 20% of youth have experienced dating violence of some form. And some studies find much higher numbers, some are lower, but when you group all the studies together, it's around 20%. So to put that in context, that's twice as common as left-handedness. Anybody here know someone who's left-handed? Whoa, anybody here left-handed themselves? Okay, so it's twice as common as that. So understanding teen dating violence and knowing how to help youth and how to prevent it is relevant to every adult who's involved with youth. Some of you are still figuring out if you're left or right-handed? There's some murmuring. All right. So it's important to debunk some myths about teen dating violence before we get into how do you prevent it. First, historically, we didn't take teen dating relationships that seriously as researchers or clinicians. We kind of thought they're so short-lived. This month it's this boyfriend, this month it's this girlfriend. They aren't that serious or real. But what we now know is that serious and even lethal violence can occur in fairly short-lived relationships. We also know from domestic homicide reviews that sometimes relationships that turn fatal began when one or both parties were youth. We also used to think maybe that teen dating violence only mattered if there was bruises or injuries, and yet we now know from research that emotional abuse, even in the absence of physical abuse, can have significant and long-lasting consequences. We assumed that we would know if a relationship was violent, that we would know or somebody's friends would know. And peers are more likely than adults to know, but even then, people who use violence are very good at presenting in a certain way, and people experiencing violence can also choose not to confide in anyone because of shame or fear. We assume that youth who experience violence know how to get help, but there are many barriers to seeking help, and even youth who seem really effective and organized in other spheres of their life may be prevented from speaking up about abuse they experience. Finally, we kind of think we know what sort of relationships dating violence might occur in, but we now know that violence can and does occur in all types of relationships. Teen dating violence leads to a host of negative consequences. Some of them can be very long-lasting, and these can be emotional and physical. We know there's long-term negative consequences right into adulthood, and that those are even more amplified when somebody faces additional kinds of disadvantage. We also know that having trouble with your relationships as a teen can predict future victimization or perpetration as an adult in intimate relationships. Because again, this is the training ground of when you're figuring out all these things you have to know about being in a relationship with somebody. So if we know that teen dating violence is relatively common and we know that it's harmful, it makes sense to take what's called a public health approach. And part of a public health approach means that we try and prevent things before they happen rather than just waiting till after the fact. So how do we prevent teen dating violence? And it may seem like an obvious question. We teach youth not to hit their dating partners, right? But remember, learning to be in intimate relationships is complicated business. Now, how do you express romantic relationship in somebody and decide if they like you back? How do you learn the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships? How do you sort out miscommunication or how to end relationships? The opposite of teen dating violence is not the absence of hitting, it's knowing how to develop and maintain healthy relationships. So there are effective curriculum-based approaches for preventing teen dating violence, and these can reduce teen dating violence by up to 75%. But not all programs are equally effective. So effective programs explicitly teach healthy relationship skills and attitudes and teach about the difference between healthy and unhealthy and effective communication. And we know that youth are much more likely to tell a friend than an adult, so they also teach help seeking, not just for individual adolescents themselves, but how would you recognize that a friend is having trouble in their relationship or might be experiencing abuse, and how would you help them get help? Beyond the content, effective programs have sufficient duration for youth to really learn the skills. If we think about these as complex skills, we don't teach reading in one day, not even a special event on reading for a full day, the way we sometimes handle relationships or violence programming. Youth need opportunities to practice new social and emotional skills over a period of time. Effective programs focus on teaching important skills and don't just tell teens what not to do. And they're also implemented carefully by educators who've received enough training and support. So the fourth R is a Canadian developed and evaluated initiative that's been shown to effectively prevent dating violence. Our team called the program the fourth R to refer to relationships, and the idea was that it was just as important as the first three R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And furthermore, that we can teach relationships the same way we teach those other areas. And it's essential to establish those skills as a fundamental part of curriculum from an early age. So given the abundance of negative relationship models available to adolescents, it's crucial that they be exposed to healthy alternatives and equipped with the skills to develop healthy relationships themselves. And that healthy relationships and skills should be seen as complementary to, not in competition with, numeracy and literacy. Youth with strong interpersonal and social emotional functioning actually do better at the other academic areas, and they're better equipped for workplace and family roles as adults. There are fourth R curriculum available for grades 7, 8, and 9 health class, so that by teaching the fourth R, you're meeting the health class expectations and also teaching these really important skills. Beyond our standard classroom programs, we have a range of other programs that have been developed specifically for priority groups, such as Indigenous youth and LGBTQ+ youth. And when we say it's a priority group, it's because these groups experience violence at a higher rate, but also because they have additional risk factors at the systems and social levels that contribute to these higher rates. Our Uniting Our Nations programs for Indigenous youth includes mentoring at the elementary and secondary school levels. And these mentoring programs teach those important healthy relationship skills, but within a culturally relevant context. And our Healthy Relationships program for LGBTQ plus youth takes an identity affirming approach and provides opportunities for youth to discuss and share with their peers about important issues such as understanding and claiming your own identities and navigating the coming out process. My colleagues and I have found that the 4th-R does indeed reduce teen dating violence, but the benefit of a healthy relationships approach is that you are building skills that can promote a number of healthy outcomes and prevent a number of risk behaviors. So you get a lot of bang for your buck when you're focusing on healthy relationships. And this clip from our 4th-R whiteboard video identifies some of those additional demonstrated impacts.
The 4th-R team has published numerous studies based on evaluating the program and its implementation. Some of these were conducted within the context of 2 randomized control trials, and others have used different methodologies. Here is a quick overview of a selection of the published research. Youth participating in the 4th-R program demonstrate better peer resistance and communication skills compared to control school youth. 4th-R youth show improved knowledge about violence, awareness about the impacts of violence, and an increased ability to identify healthy coping strategies. The 4th-R decreases violent delinquency among maltreated youth. The 4th-R reduces dating violence and increased condom use 2.5 years later. Teachers and administrators find the 4th-R easy to implement and identify significant benefits for all stakeholders.
Although sometimes educators feel like adding social and emotional learning programming is one more thing they have to pack into a busy day, what we've shown is that by using a curriculum-aligned approach, you're actually getting a whole lot of extra benefits while meeting your curriculum expectations. So educators play a key role in preventing teen dating violence and can do so by teaching healthy relationship skills and by using evidence-based practices. But like any complex social program, the solution can't depend on one group. Teachers can't do this alone. All adults have a role to play in preventing teen dating violence, and here are 5 strategies that you can use in your interactions with teenagers. First, educate yourself. There are terrific resources available on the internet. Learn the warning signs of serious or escalating violence. Learn more about why adolescents who are experiencing abuse don't seek out help. Learn about how dating violence among same-sex couples may be mistaken for bullying or peer conflict. BreakTheCycle.org is a great resource and an easy one to remember. Second, listen more than you talk. Youth are most likely to open up when we create non-judgmental spaces for discussion. We could all do a bit less lecturing and a lot more listening. One effective conversation starter, if you're worried about a teen, is to say that what you have observed and that you care, and that's it. So I've noticed that you seem really upset after you spend time with Jackson, and I'm worried about you. And then listen. As a parent, I can tell you it's most effective if it's done in the car and they can't get away from you, and then you have to have the conversation. Number 3, watch your assumptions. We all have assumptions about what kinds of people or relationships are more likely to be violent, but violence occurs in all types of relationships. Straight-A students use violence in their relationships. Star athletes can use violence in their relationships. And relationships that look perfect on Instagram can look very different in private. Number 4, teach and respect children's right to consent. There's been a lot of fuss about the concept of consent lately and teaching consent to children. And part of that fuss stems from misconception about what consent actually means. Consent does not refer to teaching children that they can and should be sexually active at the first possible moment. It's a much broader concept than that, and it's a fundamental human right. Consent is about self-determination and bodily integrity. Sometimes I'll get a hilarious picture of one of my kids that I fully intend to post, and I think I must get a certain look in my eye because one of them will say, "Hey, I don't give you consent to post that." And so I don't. Because children need to know that they can make decisions about their bodies and their privacy, and they need to learn to expect that those decisions will be respected. Finally, look for media opportunities for important conversations. Relationships are complex, and sometimes it's easier for youth to sort out how they feel about an issue when it isn't happening directly to them. The media is full of examples and opportunities to talk about healthy relationships, consent, and what constitutes violence. Use age-appropriate examples to start these conversations. It gives youth an opportunity to clarify their own values and boundaries and think about what they might do in the same situation. At the end of the day, teen dating violence is harmful and the consequences can be long-lasting. We need to swim upstream a little further and start teaching healthy relationships and consent in a more intentional manner. Although we all have a role, educators are especially well-placed to make a difference in this critical work, because healthy relationships are the foundation for positive development of all children and youth. And we all want youth to know how to engage in healthy relationships, whether, in the words of my 8-year-old, they like each other or whether they like each other. Thank you.